Guy?
How are you, Steve?
I'm fine, I'm fine.
What's all this tinsel and stuff? Couldn't you get someone to clear up after the...
Well, this is actually left over from last Christmas, I think. But, either that or the studio crew have been particularly adventurous.
I think it's a year 2000 cock-up myself.
Well, tell us how many cock-ups are going to be in the year 2000, Guy. Do you agree with Mike Lunch?
No, yes, he's understating it, if anything.
Really?
He really is. It isn't just COBOL, and the COBOL problem is bad enough. I gather from my contractor friends that COBOL salaries at the moment are rising at 15% a month.
Gosh.
And that's not just because they're worth that sort of money as people get more and more panicky, it's because there aren't any. These are all senior people who have moved on from their days as a COBOL programmer. They didn't enjoy writing COBOL. I don't think I ever knew anybody who enjoyed writing COBOL. Some of them have set up their own companies, some of them have retired, some of them are ill. Those who've done rather well, it's like going to the head of Robert McAlpine and saying, we need a brick wall laid. He may still have the skills for all I know, but he's not going to come round and fix your back garden.
Very true.
The problem isn't just in the code. The problem isn't just in the machines. I think Mike is actually being optimistic. Last figures I saw about PCs suggest something like 20% of the things being sold in the shops today will fall over at midnight at the end of January 1999.
Now, hang on, let's just clarify that. 20% of the PCs still being sold
sold today, yes.
Gosh.
A lot of them will work okay on the 1st of January once they've been reset. But at something like 20%, 1 in 5 of the PCs being sold today, if you put them to 31st of January, wait for the midnight to come past, they will crash.
Really?
Yes. Now that's a recent, that's come out in the last month.
Right.
And then the problem, I think we discussed this once before, the problem is not the programs, although that's a big enough problem, the problem is the data. People get data from each other. If I run a Y2K OK machine, and you don't, and you send me a whole bunch of information 31st of December, fine. Next day it comes through, a whole bunch of what appear to be good dates. It'll come into my warehouse, it'll have the wrong date on it, and my warehouse will chuck it all out as 100 years old. And it's going to happen. I have a lot of friends who do a lot of serious Y2K consultancy. One of them's come up with a problem, a scam, if you like, which illustrates the problem brilliantly. His plan is to go into Y2K consultancy with a new company which will offer to solve your problems with an upfront payment of £500,000, £500,000 every 6 months on results. So if you don't get good results every 6 months, you don't pay him. And he says it's very simple. He will accept the £500,000 from all his customers, and he will never do another stroke of work. Because if they haven't started on their Y2K problem at this stage, it is too late.
Really?
And by the time they come round to wanting to sue him for not having done any work, they won't be around to sue. He says if he can line up 20 companies at that base, he can walk away with 10 million quid, and there's not the slightest risk of the people. They're not going to survive. If you haven't started on it now, you're in real trouble. Mike is not exaggerating.
Okay.
And if anything, he's understating it.
Right, okay. Important words to start 98 with. Thank you for that, Guy. Okay, let's change subjects. Intel and Alpha, your views, please.
Yes, I would like to have had another week, actually, because I've now been given a phone call. Digital Equipment sold off its rights to the Alpha chip and the Hudson factory where they make it to Intel in settlement of their lawsuit. Now, it seems fairly clear to me that this won't go through on the nod. The Federal Trade Commission is going to take a very close look at this. Intel has very, very incautiously been making statements like, yes, well, we can buy the Alpha plant and close it down, or words to that effect, or implications behind what they've been saying that could be interpreted that way. And the Federal Trade Commission is not going to be happy about seeing Intel's major competitor after the PowerPC disappear from the market. Intel is coming out with a chip called Merced in 1999, which, if it works correctly and ships beautifully, will be very powerful and quite powerful enough to see them into the next millennium, or the next 5 years of the millennium.
Right.
But there is no reason to assume that that chip will ship on time and work perfectly on first. These things don't happen. It's a very, very complex chip. And it looks to me as if the gap between what we have now on the market and what we'll have when Merced ships is going to be one which Alpha will fill quite nicely. Now, I don't think that's why Intel bought Alpha. In fact, I almost think Intel doesn't know it bought Alpha. I think it just said, okay, here's a bunch of money to sort the lawsuit out, and that gives us the chance to move ahead. Oh heavens, we've bought the Hudson plant. Now, Intel can use the Hudson plant very well. It's got, in many ways, a lot of advanced features in it which Intel would really very much like to have. However, if you're running NT, and increasingly people are, and you want a really fast NT machine, what people do today is to buy Alpha. The reason not everybody does that is that it's not possible to run Intel software on the Alpha platform. Or so we thought. The DEC program, FX Pling 3.2, is now actually shipping. And what it does is to take an Intel program and run it on the Alpha. And if you have a 500 megahertz Alpha, it will run at roughly the speed of a 200 megahertz Pentium Pro, which is equivalent. Now, on an Alpha, you would expect it to run 2 or 3 times faster than that. What FX Pling 32 can also do is take Alpha code and reverse engineer it automatically to produce, take Intel code and reverse it to produce Alpha code. And it does that very quickly. I watched a CAD program being converted to Alpha in about a minute and a half. The application, which ran on Intel, taking about a minute and 20 seconds to run, ran on the Alpha and the Intel about the same speed. It took 12 seconds when it had been optimized for Alpha, which is beautiful because it means you can actually get Intel code and compile it without the source. It means you, as a purchaser of the Intel end code, the object code, shrink wrap, plug it in, turn that into Alpha code, run it, it'll run that much faster. That's very much faster.
Right, and this is all perfectly legal and...
You own the code, there's no reason that you can't run it. I can't see Intel complaining. In fact, I wouldn't be at all surprised if somewhere inside Intel there is someone saying, hang on, we don't want to close this down. This could get us into the big workstation market, because Intel doesn't have the big workstation market sorted out. Alpha does.
Okay. You mentioned NT. Microsoft have promised us, or pretty much promised us, a new version of NT, and of course Windows 98 for next year. Is all this going to happen on time and on schedule?
You know, the launch of Windows 98 on schedule might even happen if you assume that on schedule means around July. I would be very surprised to see it much before that. And the reason for that is that Windows 98 is not the big cataclysmic transformation and transfer of technology from Windows 3 to Windows 95. It's a step up. There are a couple of things which we need and want. We want USB support, it'll be in there. There'll be larger scale file system support, a few other things like that, but it's not a major radical change, it's just an upgrade. So there should be no reason why that shouldn't be out in time to be called Windows 98. Outside Winnersh and Redmond, I honestly don't know anybody who expects NT version 5 next year. I really don't. I saw an advertisement for NT staff by someone recently. I was in a pub with my NT drinking companions, and he produced this thing saying NT people wanted to do the conversion to NT5 in 1998, and these guys all sitting around with their pints absolutely rolled on the floor laughing. The idea of somebody having to actually do any work on NT5 in 1998 struck them as the funniest joke they'd heard all year. I don't see any reason to assume it would happen. I can't see why it would happen. They've only just launched the Beta 1. I don't expect it to work. It's a major change.
Yes.